host of the Bring the Juice pod, which focuses on all things Indianapolis Colts. We've got Cody. Cody, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. So lots to dissect. So let's dive right into it here. We're only a few short weeks away from the kickoff to the regular season. So getting exciting. But in Colts land, injuries were really starting to pile up for you guys in training camp to the point where, it was looking like the season could almost be getting derailed before it got started. Now, had some better news. It doesn't look like Wentz is going to be missing 12 weeks of the season like it was initially reported. Some of the other guys are starting to get a little bit healthier. What's just the latest on some of the Colts players who have been injured in preseason or training camp and sort of their timetables to return, like a Wentz or like a Nelson?
Sure. Well, I'll say this, that this week has probably been the best news all training camp for injuries. I mean, getting Wentz back was huge. And it's funny because looking at him in his first couple practices, you wouldn't think this guy had surgery 3 weeks ago on his foot. I mean, he was cutting, and not just like gingerly, like he was hardcore cutting and running. And that's just something that's a little bit surprising. And I think even the coaches were shocked at how well Wentz looked and how quickly he came back. I mean, he wasn't supposed to come back this week. He was supposed to come back next week. And even then, I don't think they thought he was going to look as good as he has. So from that front, certainly great positive news. I mean, 3 weeks out for the season, I think in my mind, I was kind of 50-50 on Wentz before that. Now I'm pretty confident he's going to be out there week one. And, Quentin Nelson, the same deal. I mean, both these guys haven't been in the full on 11 on 11s, yet. They've held them out. They've been on more 7 on 7s, but just certainly getting both these guys back, the timetable for them was so weird. It was like 5 to 12 weeks. That's such a broad timeline. And so, yeah, getting them back 3 weeks was huge. It's huge and nobody expected it, which was crazy. And then they also got Ryan Kelly back. So it certainly seems like the Colts are getting healthy at the right time, right before the season starts. So, yeah, a little bit freaking out beforehand. And, obviously a lot of eyes were on and I'm sure we'll get to it, the backup quarterback if Wentz wasn't able to go. But, yeah, all signs are looking good for where the Colts are right now. It seems like they're getting finally healthy for the first time really since they started camp.
Yeah, and I was going to say, hopefully you guys have gotten most of your injuries out of the way with already, and you don't have to worry about it in mid-season there. But you just touched on it. Obviously, for a while there, the question was, who even is going to be under center come week one? So out of the two options that you guys had in-house, who looked more impressive, or were you sort of holding out hope for would be the week one signal caller?
Yeah, I mean, if Wentz wasn't able to go, I was always pro Team Jacob Eason just because I felt like, nothing against Sam Ehlinger. He seems like a great guy. He seems like a leader, but Jacob Eason just has it. He just has the arm strength. He's got the chance to get those big league throws. That unfortunately with Sam Ehlinger, he just can't make. And I'm not talking about, throwing 80 yards on your knees like Jamarcus Russell type of thing, but he just can fit the ball in, places that a lot of quarterbacks can't. When we saw that a little bit in week one against the Carolina Panthers, he had a nice throw to Paris Campbell, looked really, really sharp in that game. And he had a little bit of a rougher game in week number 2, but I thought he had a nice bounce back second half. He's had a couple, he had a rough practice on Monday, but he bounced back again. So I think for me, it's Jacob Eason. I mean, he's also taking care of the football, which is compared to Sam Ehlinger, which is interesting because a lot of people said Sam Ehlinger's pros or he can run the ball, he can take care of the ball, and he's thrown 3 picks in 2 games. So you can debate all you want whether or not they're all his fault. I don't think they are necessarily, but Eason hasn't thrown an interception yet. And he's also just looked so much better, and in terms of he can actually push the ball down the field. He can actually make the throws. So for me, it's always been Jacob Eason. I'll probably always be on the one eye towards the future type of thing, the guy who I think has the biggest and the highest ceiling. But I also acknowledge I think Jacob Eason probably has a lower floor as well. But yeah, if you're making me go out tomorrow between those two guys, I'm probably going to stick with Eason. And I personally feel like he's been the better quarterback so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm an Oklahoma fan in college football, so I was never a big Ehlinger fan to begin with there out of Texas. So I was probably leaning towards Eason as well, too. But it's been kind of a mixed bag at the quarterback position, really since Andrew Luck retired in Indianapolis there. And with Wentz now sort of hoping, at least in Indy, to be that next guy for the foreseeable future there. Like, what kinds of changes on offense do you see Indianapolis implementing this year, as opposed to the Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Rivers eras that we saw in recent years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think Wentz just offers, honestly, the closest thing to Andrew Luck in terms of this type of style he likes to play with, right? He can make all the throws. He can do all these things. And not that the other guys couldn't, but I mean, Jacoby Brissett either wouldn't or whatever it was with Jacoby. He had the arm. He was safe a lot of times, right? And with Phillip Rivers, he was very immobile. I mean, he was nearly 40. So, I mean, that's not coming out of shock. Also dealing with a foot injury. So I think in terms of the Colts offense this year, I think certainly there's a lot more they can do, design quarterback runs, stuff like that, to kind of mix it up a little bit and be a lot less predictable this year. Like, we all knew Phillip Rivers wasn't going to sneak the football. Like, we knew that. But Wentz offers something so different and so unique in that way. And I think the RPO game as well, he can really help with that. He can also move, which obviously the Colts haven't really had that. You know, he can move better than even Jacoby could a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I think overall just opens your offense up to be a lot less predictable and also can make a lot more of those deep vertical throws that I think the Colts were kind of lacking last year. I know the stats will kind of indicate that they were pretty good last year, but also I felt like they just needed some more. Like, I even looked to that Buffalo game, the playoff game, and I was like, man, the Colts just need something more. They just need a little bit more of a threat to kind of take it and run with it when need be and push the ball down the field. And Wentz certainly is able to do that. So, yeah, I think this just opens your offense up so much more than you've had the past couple of years.
Yeah, and obviously when you have a capable quarterback under center, obviously helps with the trickle-down effect to the wide receivers. And Colts have three really intriguing young players that, you know, could be ready to take that next step in their development out of Michael Pittman Jr., Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell. Like, who are you most bullish on to have sort of that breakout year this season?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think Pascal's always just going to be, he doesn't get the credit he deserves, but he's just so consistent. I don't envision him just having a, breakout year in terms of I think if I'm looking to somebody, it's probably Pittman, because I felt like he looked really strong in a couple games last year. He dealt with some inconsistencies, but that Buffalo game, he looked really darn good. So I'm looking to him. And Paris Campbell, I love Paris Campbell. I think if he can stay healthy, he's a mismatch, man. Nobody can keep up with him from a speed standpoint and also a size standpoint. And a lot of people think that Paris Campbell's small. No, he's 6 foot, nearly 215. Like, he's a big wide receiver for that kind of speed. So I think if I'm choosing, probably Pittman. I think he has the best chance to be the Colts wide receiver number one. And I think he will, if all goes well this year, he's trending in that direction. But I would say this, just don't sleep on Paris Campbell, because he could be the secret weapon that the Colts have that could really take their offense to the next level.
Yeah. And continuing with our theme of offense here, obviously expectations, and even from, a fantasy football standpoint, Jonathan Taylor getting a lot of love preseason and high expectations going into this year. Now, whether it's a current player in the NFL or even past player, like, who does his running style sort of remind you of? And, like, what's a realistic projection for him in 2021?
Yeah, man, I've seen a couple different comparisons, and I'm totally blanking on it right now. But I love, I'll just say this, his sheer power and speed combination. I mean, you don't see that in a back that's nearly 230, right? So I think the expectations should really be high, but also understanding that the Colts like that running back by committee, which fantasy people don't like to hear that. But as a fan, I like to hear that, because that means he's going to be fresher for the playoffs. I mean, I think if Marlon Mack can fully be back, I see Taylor being the lead guy, but I think Matt could kind of cut into his production a little bit. So I'm always telling people I feel like are drafting Taylor really high, which I'm loving that he's getting that love, but also realizing that he was the guy last year. Like, Mac wasn't, he was out, right? So if Mac can get back to where he was, I could see him maybe cutting a little bit to Jonathan Taylor, his production a little bit. I honestly could see that.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as either a change of pace back or even third down pass catching back, like who are you seeing really emerging this year and taking hold of that role if everyone obviously stays healthy there? Is it Mac? Is it Hines? Is it someone else? Like what are you seeing playing out?
Yeah, I think it's definitely Hines. He's been really, really good. That's his forte, honestly, is that catching out of the backfield and just. I mean, I saw today. I was actually down at Colts training camp today, and Carson Wentz hit him for on a wheel route, and he was just wide open. So I think Hines is the guy there, the perceived receiving back. But I'll say this: the great thing about all these Colts backs, even Jordan Wilkins, they all can catch the football. Like none of these guys are just terrible at catching the ball. They're all really good at it. So I think the Colts are going to use all these guys in their passing game. But I think if you're making a primary guy, it's Hines, because he actually, funny enough, led the Colts in receptions last year, like as a team, not just in running backs, as a team. So he's certainly a mismatch. Hopefully, I really hope the Colts use him in the slot a lot more this year. So I think he's definitely presents a real big problem to a lot of these guys. He's so fast. He was the fastest running back coming out, I believe, that 2018 draft. So the Colts have added a lot of speed in their offense, and I think that's going to definitely go to their advantage, and defenses are going to be gassed. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of defenses, we've given the offense lots of time here. Let's give a little bit of a spotlight to the boys on the other side of the ball. And Colts top draft pick, Kwity Paye, obviously has some big shoes to fill as far as some of the departing players from that defensive line. Is he sort of a day one plug and play starter, or do you think he's going to get eased into action this year?
From what I've seen, he's going to be your starter at one defensive end. Mm-hmm. He's looked great. He obviously has things he has to work on. He was kind of raw coming out of Michigan. The big knock on him was he doesn't have a counter move, right? He has a nice initial move, but the counter move's kind of where he's been working on. And it seems like the Colts obviously have identified that, and he's been really working on that. I mean, he got his first career sack in week 2, and yeah, I think he's going to kind of be a trial by error kind of guy, right? He's going to be plugged in and played, not as a perfect defensive end, but I think he's going to learn a ton just from that experience. So I think I'm really more intrigued in the other defensive end position. Who in the world is it going to be? I have a couple guys in mind, but yeah, as far as Kwity Paye is concerned, he's kind of just one of those guys you're like, he's going to start. I mean, he's got to start. So I think he kind of provides a little bit of everything in terms of stopping the run and also against the pass as well.
Yeah. Would you say he's been maybe the most impressive rookie either side of the ball in training camp thus far?
Yeah, I would say so. I haven't seen, and this obviously is without Dayo Odeyingbo, who was their second round pick. He's not out there because he's still recovering from that Achilles. But yeah, from defense, yeah, he's definitely been the biggest guy. I mean, I'm trying to think who all the Colts had. They didn't have a ton of draft picks. This is probably their least amount of draft picks they've had since Ballard has been the GM. So, I mean, you got Sean Davis, who was out of Florida, and then you really got Kwity. So I think out of those two, Quity's definitely made the most noise so far.
Yeah. Now, in 2020, they were a very balanced team where you wouldn't necessarily think, okay, Phillip Rivers and his 10-yard dink and dunk throws that he was sort of running, that they would have a high-scoring offense, but they were actually 10th ranked offense, 10th ranked defense in 2020. So if you had to look into the future and say that one of those two areas takes a step back this year, which do you think it is? Do you think they take a step backwards defensively or offensively this year? Or do you think both of them take step forwards and they end up being 9th and 9th?
Right. Well, I think if I'm choosing, I'm probably going to go defense just because the pass rush concerns me a little bit. I mean, they've addressed it, but I'm still concerned about that pass rush because that was their biggest Achilles heel on defense, not from the interior, but more of their edge rush guys. They addressed it in the draft. They've addressed it in the draft the last couple drafts, and it's still not to the place they want it to be. So, I mean, I feel like right now the pass rush is really going to make, this defense either better than it was or worse than it was. And there's just a lot less proven guys, I guess, this year than they had last year. I mean, they lost Houston and they also lost Autry, who are your two leading sackers on your defensive line besides DeForest Buckner. So, I mean, those are big losses. They really are. I like Kwity, but to expect a rookie to go out and get 8 to 10 sacks, I think is a little bit, ambitious, I guess. So I'm going to say just slightly step back. I don't think they're going to have a massive drop off because I do think it's good to have this unit with another year of cohesion. I mean, really, they have a lot of their starters back from last year. The only difference is, defensive end. And then really that's about it. Honestly, this unit is very, very cohesive. So I could see it going either way. But I just think and it really depends, obviously, if Wentz is healthy. If Wentz is healthy, I see this Colts offense just maybe being about the same, maybe a little bit better in certain areas. But yeah, I would probably go defense if I'm choosing.
Yeah, and not major injuries, but there were, again, some minor nicks and bruises to both Leonard and DeForest Buckner there as well, too. Like, what's the update on them? Are they going to be good to go week 1, or have they already even returned to training camp? Like, what did you see today?
Yeah, they were both out there. They were ready to go. They're 100%. It was funny. Leonard is so funny. You can hear him. We were like all the way up in the stands, and I was like, I hear Darius Leonard, but I don't see him. Where is he at? So he's ready to go. I think they're both ready to go. Just more the Colts being overly cautious. They've done that a lot in training camp. I feel like if week 1's tomorrow, a lot of these guys who have been resting are probably playing. So, I mean, the Colts have 3 weeks out, so they don't have to rush these guys at all. They're just waiting for them to be 100%. But yeah, DeForest Buckner and Quentin Nelson actually went up against each other today on 7-on-7s, and they both won a rep from what I saw. And DeForest Buckner continues to be absolutely dominant. Darius Leonard was in there as well. He's just Darius Leonard. He's always making plays. He's always talking. So yeah, both those guys seem good to go, ready for week 1.
Beautiful. Now, if we look at it from a divisional standpoint here, all indications are that Houston's probably going to be the doormat of the division. Jacksonville, probably a developmental year, probably better than they did last year, but probably a year or two away from realistically competing for a playoff spot. So it's really going to come down to you guys and the Titans. Now, for a team who it seems like always is vying for a playoff spot or coming in as a wild card, it's almost shocking to realize that Colts haven't won the division since 2014. So if they're hoping to change that this year, like, what is the one key thing that they need to improve on from what they did in 2020 if they want to be raising a divisional banner when all is said and done?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to identify just one thing, but I would say this, just getting off to better starts. I mean, I feel like they've kind of, at the beginning of the year, they haven't won an opening game, I believe, since like 2014. So it's kind of been ridiculous at this point. And they haven't won in Jacksonville. They need to get over that hump. There's just a few like things that they haven't done in a long time. They just need to like just do and stop feeding into that, because it's just like, oh, we can't win in Jacksonville. We can't win week 1. And it's just like, let's just stop doing that and let's actually do it and win. So I think just getting over those things is something big. I already mentioned the pass rush, so I won't get back into that. But ultimately, it comes down to the quarterback. It's got to come down to the quarterback. If Wentz can be, doesn't have to be 2017 Wentz. If he can be 2018 Wentz, right? If he can just do the things that he did and just be a good quarterback, I mean, I think this team certainly has all the pieces to be there and to really compete. Personally, if I'm choosing between the Colts and the Titans, if Wentz is good, I have the Colts as my favorite just because I feel like as a team from 1 to 53, they are a lot better than the Titans. Titans maybe have a lot more like explosion and flashiness, I guess, because they do have Julio, they have AJ Brown, they have Derrick Henry, but their defense is nothing special at all. And the Colts actually have a legit potential last year, top 10 defense, right? Could potentially be even better. We'll see on that. But yeah, I mean, I think the Colts are a more well-rounded team, but I think the Titans have a little bit more star power on that offense, which is kind of, it really comes down to your preference. What do you think there? So yeah, it's really going to hinge, I think, on those things for me.
Yeah. And you just mentioned, getting off to slow starts in past years. Colts have a rough schedule of those first couple of weeks this year. So it's going to be a tall task for them to get off to even, 3-2 start would probably be really good for them in their first 5 games based on who they've got on their schedule there. So what is that coming down to most? Is it coaching? Is it game planning? Like, what is it? Why do you think they've been faltering right out of the gates in years past? You just mentioned they haven't won an opening week since 2014. Well, that was the last time they won the division as well, too. And we're talking about 7 years now for a team that's a pretty good ball club over the last 5+ years.
Yeah, I wish I had a direct answer on what it was. I don't even know, honestly. It's just kind of been, it's almost like you almost laugh at it at this point. It's kind of like, this is getting pathetic. Like, come on, guys. I do think there is, it has to fall on the head coach somewhat, as much as I love Frank Reich and I think he deserved that extension. I also want to be critical of Frank. I've been critical of him in the past, and I think he deserves that as well. Like, if your team doesn't come out and win again in week number 1, okay, what's the issue? Why is this happening? And this is not just Frank. Like, this was Chuck Pagano as well, the last coach. Like, what is going on? Is there some mental thing that we need to just get over? I don't know what it is exactly. But yeah, I wish I had a direct answer, because then I would go tell the Colts and we could figure it out.
Yeah. They can bring you on as a consultant there and you can get a 6-figure contract. So which Colts player, and maybe let's pick one on the offensive side of the ball and one on the defensive side of the ball. Which Colts player who's not getting a lot of media love right now do you think is going to take a real step forward this year? So someone who we're not talking about right now, but maybe by mid-season, all of a sudden it's like, hey, so-and-so is having a really good year.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned Paris Campbell. I think I got to stay there. And nobody talks about him. Everybody's written him off. I think he could look, midway through the season, be like, holy smokes, this guy's leading the Colts in receiving yards. Mm-hmm. Like, I really think he could do that. I think he deserves all that credit because he's a really good player when he's healthy. He looked really good in camp today, and he's continuing to look really good. And it's been kind of a freak thing with Paris. I mean, year number one, it was more of, okay, he's not in football shape where he should be. He admitted as such. But really, year number two, it was just a freak thing that happened. Harrison Smith comes, hits his knee, and he's done. Mm-hmm. So for Paris, I think if he can just stay relatively healthy this year, he's going to be a guy that we're looking at and saying, wow, this guy is a really good receiver. So he's my offensive guy. Defensive guy, this is tougher for me to pick one. I'm going to go probably with Bobby Okereke at linebacker. He's kind of been overshadowed by Darius Leonard, and, don't talk about him a whole lot, but I thought his rookie season, I think he was voted as like one of the best rookies by PFF. So he had kind of it was a good second year, but not quite the leap we were expecting. So I think now with Anthony Walker leaving in free agency, all right, it's Okereke's time to really be that Mike linebacker. And he's looked really, really good in camp. He's one of those athletic freak guys in that mold of the Darius Leonards, those type of guys, not as athletic, but he's really, really good in pass coverage as well. And I feel like his biggest knock is like, you just want to see him around the ball a little bit more. And I feel like in camp, at least, he's been around the ball a lot. So I think Bobby Okereke is a really safe option there for a guy that you're like, wow, he's actually one of the better Mike linebackers in the league looking at it.
Yeah. All right. Well, one final question before we let you go here. Just got announced today that the Colts released their second kicker. So it's going to be Rex Specs. Rodrigo Blankenship is going to be their starting kicker again this year. Obviously, a bit of a quirky guy off the field. There's all sorts of tales and anecdotes of his love for Lego and stuff like that and whatnot. What's been your favorite Rodrigo Blankenship story that you've stumbled across since he's joined the Colts?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question. He's just this sheer amount of Lego sets that this man has, that a grown man has, is just, it's incredible to me. I mean, I love Legos, but I mean, this man literally is like the Lego master, man. Like, I don't know how he does it. I could not just sit there. That would be so tedious to me to build something like that. But yeah, I mean, I just absolutely love Rodrigo, man. You got to respect the specs, like you said. I mean, I'm so glad that he won it out. And honestly, it's crazy that he won it out because Eddie Pinheiro was also perfect as well in camp and preseason. So I think it really pushed him to be a better kicker this year. I mean, I really do. He was good last year, but he also had some moments where you're like, how did you not make that? So, but yeah, Rodrigo Blankenship, I think he's one of the better kickers in the league personally. I know I might get some flack for that, but I mean, he broke the Colts scoring record last year as a rookie. So, I mean, I think this guy has all the potential in the world. There was so much buzz from him last year when he signed with the Colts. Everybody's like, loves him apparently. And I found that out really quickly. A lot of Georgia people love him. And I kind of see why. He's really a legend, man.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. No one can say that we don't give kickers love on this show now. We just did a whole Q&A with them there. So beautiful. Cody, well, we appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us today. For those that are listening that want to either tune into your podcast or connect with you on social media, where are the best places to find you these days?
Yes. So from the podcast angle, you can find me on YouTube at Bring the Juice. You just type in Colts Podcast. We're there. Same deal with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places you really listen to podcasts, we're on. You can just type in Bring the Juice. We're there. As far as social media goes, you can find personally myself on Twitter and Facebook. I'm more active on Twitter at CP Felger 55. So you can find me there. I'm normally pretty active in terms of tweeting about the team and staying up to date with those things. And then the podcast at BTJ Pod on really everywhere, social media wise, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We have a Facebook page as well. So yeah, those are kind of the places that you can find the podcast. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. I love the opportunity to do that and really be able to cover the team that I'm really passionate about. So very blessed and grateful for that opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, let's knock on wood here that all the injuries for the Colts are behind them and you guys will have a relatively healthy season ahead of you. But exciting times. Meaningful NFL football games are just around the corner.
Ooh. Yes, it's about time.